Hello, dear friends. Last time we promised to talk about how to learn your karmic task. First of all, I can share a tiny part as sometimes, in my lectures, I answer such a question in jest. That the main thing, the karmic task of a person, is to find out his or her karmic task. The whole development of a person is divided into separate sections. And the very first section, as the initial stage of mastering all this wisdom, it is so called the path of suffering. One way or another, a person gradually gains experience, and as I have already mentioned, constantly from life to life he is trained and trained. While he hasn't yet well developed the mental level, while the ability to analyze, compare, and come to logical conclusions is not yet developed. Of course, for him the most important thing is training in life situations. And what is the purpose of all this? Again, I have mentioned it more than once, that the most important thing a person has to do in the process of his development is to develop in himself or build up a standard set of qualities at the expense of a standard set of situations, no more and no less. And until a man copes with this task, all the same there will be a wheel of birth and death, and he can't jump anywhere out of this wheel. So naturally, every life a man works out some qualities. This is his main karmic task. And how do you know what a person needs to work on specifically on this period of time, in this current reincarnation? The easiest way to know is by the signs of the zodiac. Each person was born at a certain time, and accordingly, this will be associated with some sign of the zodiac. Each sign gives a person some negative qualities and some positive ones, which means that when a person is born under some sign of the zodiac, he must overcome in his life the negativity that this sign can excite in him, and must therefore also develop some new positive states. In the process of his life, his reincarnation, he goes by this sign, working on those qualities that are associated with this sign, according to whether the person or this sign was born in the beginning or in some other place of this sign. So you can judge now, which part on his program is therefore fulfilled by this sign. If a person is born closer to the end of this sign, then accordingly it turns out that he has already worked out a program for this sign, and therefore he can be born in the next sign, in the next life, and his main task will be in the development of the qualities that can give him this new sign of the zodiac. A person gradually masters all these qualities, which are somehow related to the Zodiac Circle. Of course, a person can get more accurate information if a more precise horoscope is drawn up for him. Horoscopes take into account many additional points, and to a much greater extent they can expand a person's knowledge about what can happen in his life, what are the major life nodes, what intersections through which he will have to pass in his life. At least if people even for themselves familiarize themselves with that, what signs are responsible for what qualities in a person's development, then this is already significant enough and can help a person to approach his life more competently. Don't be afraid to live. Don't be afraid to accumulate experience, because this is the most important thing that should take place in your life. When a man has fully mastered all these qualities, which are associated with the signs of the zodiac, then accordingly he fulfills his task, which he has to fulfill during this path of suffering. After that, he passes to a new stage of his development, where he already will have a completely different karmic task. And there, when a man has already passed the way of tests, by confirming that he is able to competently use these qualities, which he worked out during many lives, then he already passes to the new way of service. The path of service is connected with another task and a completely different attitude to life. This is the path of service, when the qualities that the man has developed in the previous stage of his development, he uses to help others in their advancement, in the development, their consciousness. And there he develops a new level of human capabilities. Because it is connected with the concept of superhuman way of development, where the accumulated experience is passed to more young consciousnesses. A man continues to specify something for himself, improve something in himself. That is, as we said before, he turns into a self-development system, and then he starts to form his life himself. Then it will be very interesting for many to know how family relations fit in with karmic task. Since in the process of accumulating these qualities, all this work takes place in the interrelations with different people, in relations with society. Then, of course, family relations take a special place in this process, and all processes that take place in the family take place in the same way of these processes take place in the whole society. And when a person in this small group, as a family, has learned to build relationships with others, then this skill will help him throughout his life, in the society. Because if the quality is worked out, then it will work in any situations. And when the person really understands that family relations give a lot for development of relationship skills, and when the person really aspires to build up relations in the family, to work out various types of relations in the family, then it will be much easier for him in life and in building relations everywhere. How to establish gradually the relationship between a man and a woman in the beginning? When young people are just starting to date, of course they try to like each other, and so many qualities at this stage of the relationship, they are not yet visible. Because almost all young people put on masks and want to seem better than they really are. And yet very important at this stage of building relationships, this desire for closeness, this embrace, this kissing, this desire for physical closeness. That is, this stage in the development of relationships touch on that which is more connected with the corporeal level. Then when already begins to occur more intimate relations, and already goes, if we can already say the family is built, here already relations pass to another level. And gradually it begins to prevail those skills or the training of those skills that are more related to the concept of psychology. language development, and physical relationships between a man and a woman. And of course, this is a more difficult stage in the construction of family relationships, because masks quickly come off. A person cannot constantly keep himself in a certain tension. And anyway, after a few months of a family relationship, when people are already living together, as they say, the initial invitation begins to break on the rocks of life. And here it's no longer possible to hide their true states, true qualities, and there is a period of lapping, when everyone already seeks to somehow smooth over the corners. In general, not everyone strikes, which is very often the case, and the opposite when someone seeks to dominate another person. This, except for scandals, doesn't lead to anything good, with rare exceptions. When someone submits to such a regime and cultivates the principle of victim, but again, nothing good comes out of this in the family. Only when through many years of effort they adapt to each other and learn to find reasonable compromises, does something eventually start to work out. The most important thing is that there is a desire to continue life together, especially if children are already born, and then there is a new responsibility to the children, who are important to both parents, and the mother and father are very important to the children. And you and I also constantly encounter in life, if not a completely family, of course in many ways children suffer from this. That is why it is a great task for parents to make the family strong. And then children will also receive attention from both women and men. And the experience for children will certainly be much more extensive when both father and mother are involved in their parenting. And how do these relations between husband and wife develop? As I have already said, the adjustment goes a certain period of time. And accordingly, it turns out that at some stage there are still boundaries between the minds. And respectively, when in the relationship between people don't go over this boundary of contact, then this interaction between people is quite comfortable in the process of living together. When people really want to understand each other, gradually this boundary of contact is erased. If this process happens very well in the family, then there is a moment, a type of relationship between the spouses, when they don't need a border between them. They already understand each other very well, literally with half a word, with half a glance. Sometimes there may even be moments when they simultaneously begin to say the same phrase. The same thoughts may appear, for some reason. It already speaks volumes that between these minds the border has been erased. There can and certainly will be boundaries between them and other people, until the person fully learns how to build competent relationships with all people. Here I can share how some men, friends, have said that it is easier for them to build relationships with women, because the main thing for them is soap and sex. The rest will always suit them, and women are more sophisticated natures. Of course, they need more attention. And if we return to horoscopes of the zodiac signs, Many women are interested in what sign their chosen one, and they try to find a partner, taking into account what signs are compatible with each other.
того, какие знаки совместимы между собой. Но здесь возникает такой момент, что
But there is a
порой
point
это может иметь
that at first
определенное значение,
it may have
пока
some
люди
value,
действительно не научились
until
этому
people really learn
пользоваться.
how to build
Но
relationships.
когда уже
But
вот
when
этот
this process is
процесс
basically
в
completed in
основном
person,
завершен у человека,
it
то
doesn't matter at
ему
all what
становится
zodiac sign
совершенно
this or
неважно
that person belongs
тот
to,
момент, к какому зодиаку относится тот или другой человек, потому что
because
в
they
этот
can
момент
already
он
intelligently
уже
build the
выстраивает
relationship with
свои
any
отношения с
person,
любым
no
человеком,
matter
к
what
какому
sign
бы
of the zodiac they
зодиаку
belong
он ни
to.
относился.
I can remember back when our
Вспомнить еще,
children were
когда
smaller,
наши
and
дети
once my
были
son was
меньше,
still
и
a
как бы все
teenager,
еще будучи
he said you
подростком,
can ask God
подростку,
for anything,
можно
but
просить
as a
у Бога
rule,
все, что
they will
угодно.
give such a huge
Но, как
divine nothing
правило,
from
с
heaven.
неба дадут такую огромную божественную дулю. Это
This
значит,
means
что
that nothing can
ничто
happen
от этого
without a
ничего не
person's
может
diligence.
произойти.
And
И
of
можно,
course, you can
конечно,
ask
очень
for a lot of
много чего
things.
просить, очень много
Very much
информации
information
стремиться
aspires to
получить
receive
от
from somewhere.
кого-нибудь.
But in
В
any
любом
case,
случае,
without
без
efforts of the
усилий человека
person,
все равно ничего не
anything still will
получится.
not turn out.
И поэтому
Therefore,
для
people must, in their
своего
development, build in
развития, сохранения
relationships, first
отношений,
of all,
они
start
должны
with themselves.
прежде всего начинать с самого себя.
So
Поэтому
let me
иногда
remind
приводят
you of the
такую
phrase,
фразу:
if you
«Измени
change
себя,
yourself,
и
the
изменится
world
и
around you will
окружающий
change.
мир». И вот
If
если
everyone
каждый
approach
будет
oneself first of
подходить
all with
прежде
serious
всего к
responsibility,
самому себе
with
с
a certain measure of
серьезной
responsibility to oneself,
ответственностью, с определенной меркой,
and when he
относиться
really
именно
makes
к
effort
себе.
to build
И
more
когда
and more
будет
competent
действительно
relations with
реально
each time,
предпринимать усилия
trying to
для
do
того,
better and
чтобы
better with each
скалным образом
situation,
выстраивать все более и более
then there will be a
правильные
qualitative process
отношения с
of
каждой
conscious
ситуацией,
development.
стремиться поступать все лучше и лучше, вот тогда реально будет идти качественный, быстрый процесс развития
And in the
сознания.
end, it will be
И в
absolutely not
конечном
important
итоге
for people to build
людям будет
relations
совершенно
with what
неважно,
person.
с каким
With any
человеком
person, it will
выстраивать
succeed.
отношения. С любым человеком это получится. Вот этого
This,
мы,
of
конечно,
course,
и
is what
желаем,
we wish for
чтобы
you,
вы в своей
so
жизни
that in your life
научились
you learn to
выстраивать
build competent
отношения
relationships
с
with any
любыми
people
людьми, с
with whom
которыми
you
вы
may
встретите
encounter in
в
life.
жизни. В следующий раз мы
Next time, we will
поговорим с
talk to you
вами,
about
можно ли
whether
избежать
it's possible to
кармических
avoid karmic
ситуаций или
situations
ударов
and
судьбы.
blows of fate.